Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar on my CPE. My name is Kate Jones and I'm joining you from Houston, Texas. I hope you're safe and healthy, and it's my pleasure to be your moderator for today's webinar. Firstly, I want to make sure your audio and video are working properly so you can see the screen and hear the sound. Please let us know in the chat panel. Also, to let us know where are you joining from, that is the city, state, or any part of the world. All right, so now before we proceed, I'd like to thank you for choosing my CPE as your continuing education partner. We have also started a social initiative. For every credit that you receive on our platform, we donate one meal to an unserved under our One Credit, One Meal program. So thank you again for supporting our wonderful cause. One more important thing, everyone, to obtain the credit certificate, it is required as per the regulations to remain in the session till the end and answer all the polling questions. And an evaluation form shall be sent within 24 hours of completion of this webinar if you have answered all the polls. And as we all know, this is an interactive webinar. So please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A panel and the presenter would be happy to take them on the go or towards the end if the time permits. And lastly, if you get any technical issues here, please feel free to reach us in the chat panel or email us at support@my-cp.com. And just for your reference, we'll also give you the instructions in the chat panel. So now then, everyone, let's move on to another part of this session. Yes, the presenter for today's webinar, we have Mr. Drew Stevens with us, leadership change expert, and he's also the CEO of Stevens Performance. With over 35 years of professional business experience working with both Wall Street and Main Street businesses. He provided 3 instant method that led to personal transformation, top line growth, and business success. He works with founders and senior leaders of middle market organization to scale the business and transform it into wealthy, profitable organization. And through strategic planning and revenue expertise leading have led to assisting organizations in achieving over $11 billion during his 25 years of tenure. So without any further ado, Drew, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. I really appreciate it. Hello, everybody. I really appreciate you being here. I'm excited to be with us. And I'm looking forward to delivering this webinar today. What we're going to talk about is annuities and resolving some of the myths. There are a bunch of myths resolving annuities. I've laid them out for you. And I want to let you know that very similar to life insurance, where there are myths and theories about life insurance, annuities also, to a certain extent, get a little bit of a bad rap, as it were. And so my desire for you is to learn a little bit more about annuities, get a good understanding of how they actually operate, and allow you to understand some of the ideas that you can take from this particular section and really create some investment vehicle should you decide to do that. And now I'm going to be speaking in generalities. And I do that very specifically because I'm never certain, excuse me, my allergies are acting up today. I'm never certain who's on the webinar. I don't get a lot of the pre-registration information. So what I would like to do is, from a foundational level, approach things at a very high level, give you some basic foundation information. And then, as Kate mentioned to you, in this particular paradigm, we have a chat window. And so what my intentions of doing with you this afternoon are simply this. Please use the chat window for very specific information. Please use the chat window for questions that you have at any one point in time, or please ask for clarification if you need it. I'm always overwhelmed by some of the comments that I get that the webinar was too general, or there wasn't enough information covered, or it wasn't the right information. Hey, look, that's because I'm trying to appeal to everyone here. So that's the time when you can use the chat window, if you don't mind, to be a little bit more specific, a little bit more selfish, as it were, so that you're able to get the information that you like. And then from there, I can narrow the scope a little bit and address your very particular need. In addition to that, if you have any questions at any time, what we're going to do is open it up for question and answer. I'll leave a little bit of that for the very end of the presentation. And last but not least, I have some questions that I'm going to ask you. It'll give you some ideas of things to think about and things that you'd like to learn as we go through today's session. So let's get started. Why am I talking about this conversation right now? Well, here's the deal. We know specifically, according to specifics, that 32% of Americans have less than $5,000 saved for retirement, and 15% have no retirement savings whatsoever. As I actually give this presentation to you today, and I never like to put dates, I never like to zero in on anything specific because I want to leave this open for people to listen to it on a recording at some particular point in the future. But as we got started, if you were watching the video component, you may have saw me look away. And I did that because I was waiting for something literally before we got the webinar started. And as Kate was doing the introduction, the news that I was awaiting came. The Federal Reserve here in the United States has lifted the interest rates by 50 basis points. 50 basis points. That's 0.5%. In other words, interest rates are going up. Right now, here in the United States, we're battling little over 9% inflation. We're battling the high cost of goods such as lumber, coffee, sugar, cocoa. We're dealing with the real estate market that has increased by 27% or perhaps higher based upon where you live. And last but not least, we have market volatility. What on earth does that all mean? And why am I bringing it up? Several reasons. Number one, if you haven't saved for retirement, and if you're looking to go into your bank account and you notice that you have less money, it's because you've been spending more money. That's number one. Number two, if you're looking at your retirement savings and you were thinking, oh, I could retire off all of my retirement, and suddenly your pension plan, your retirement plan happens to take a hit because of market volatility, you're going to have less for retirement. It's that simple. And third, if you have a pension plan with inflation the way that it is, with companies not making as much money as they typically do, we had seen this in 2008. Hopefully there will not be a recession, but the problem then becomes whether or not organizations are then going to fully fund pension plans. And if they don't, there's going to be need for your pension. And there's a reason why I'm bringing all of this up. And I'll mention this momentarily to you. So why are we talking about this now? Why you think about annuities? Well, there's a couple of things. Number one, you need to make sure that you have enough income based upon when you decide to retire. Many individuals, and if you look at some of the social media pages, if you look at news periodicals, the interesting thing is that many people are thinking because of where we were on COVID, that they were going to be able to retire at 30 and 40 years of age. There are 50-year-olds that are thinking about retiring right now. The question then becomes, do you have enough to really retire? Do you have enough income? Do you have enough savings? Do you have enough to meet the expenses that you believe that you might have? Number two is, do you have an income gap? When you collect your pension, you're probably getting anywhere between 30% on the low end, maybe 55, 60% on the high end of what you're normally making. And so if your pension is not going to pay you in accordance to your expenses, then you have what's known as an income gap. And if you have that income gap, then you should be looking at instruments to take that over rather than going and get another, call it a full or a part-time job. In addition to that, there's always Social Security, but some individuals don't even know what they're getting in Social Security. They don't know how much it's going to pay. And sometimes, because of the work that I do, even with Social Security, there's still an income gap, and Social Security will not really take over the income that you're needing. You really need to understand your future issues, and you need to understand, to a certain extent, age, genetics, and bloodline. Will you have health issues at some particular point? We all know that, unfortunately, somewhere, some way along the line, we may have a particular health issue that will require some type of expense. We also know that people are living a little bit longer, which means that you're going to need income to live beyond those years. What are those years? Where do you want to be when you know, grow up, as they say? And that's my desire in which to help you today. We know that when it comes to retirement, that there's a lot of anxiety out there. There are many individuals that I speak with on a day-to-day basis that are very, very concerned about running out of any of the money that they have. It could be an individual that I'm talking to at 30 or an individual that I'm talking to at 65, 70. The fact is that individuals are very concerned about running out of money. With the skyrocketing inflation right now, you know, my goodness, a gallon of gasoline is just as much as a drink of Frappuccino anyway at a Starbucks. And so, you know, the normal individual buys anywhere between 6 to 8 drinks from Starbucks a week. And when I say the normal individual from the Starbucks perspective, you know, after a while, that becomes a whole heck of a lot of money. And as costs increase, those Starbucks coffees are going to cost more, just like gasoline. It's costing, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, $80 to fill up a tank, maybe a year, 2 years ago, and now it's costing double that. We also know that healthcare costs are rising. They continually rise. It's painful for everyone, from prescription medication to even over the counter, you know, aspirin, those sorts of things. With all of those costs rising, that's going to eat into your savings. And what you want to be thinking of is, how much do you need? How much? And if you don't know, one of the things that you really want to do is sit down either by yourself or with a professional, whether it's a CPA or a financial advisor, a portfolio manager. Really doesn't matter, you know, what professional you're speaking with. But the fact is that you need to have an idea of what your income is now, what you want your income to be should you decide to retire at some particular point, and what your expenses are going to be. It's one of those things where we know that individuals today, although with COVID, it's less so today than it has been, but it's starting to marginally increase. There was always a thought in the 70s and 80s that consumer debt was exceedingly high. That consumer debt is now starting to take a little bit more hold, and it's taking a little bit more hold because as inflation is increasing, what we're now starting to see is that people are starting to take on more debt because they just can't afford it. Many people sat on the sidelines. Many people were taking the government relief packages. Many people have not gone back to work. The list goes on and on and on. At the end of the day, people are going to get older. You're going to need money to retire. So who am I? Why am I bringing this information to you today? And how did I come to do it? Well, I've been delivering information on this platform now for a little over a year and a half. Very excited to be with the individuals here and continue to provide intellectual property for all of you, whether you're professionals serving clients, whether you're new to the business and you're starting to speak to clients, or maybe you're just a client yourself. You came across this website and said, I want to know a little bit more about annuities. So to a certain extent, that's the type of demographic. Without understanding the audience and how I'm going to help you. I have 37 years of Wall Street experience. A lot of that was spent on the trading floors. A lot of that was spent talking to a lot of CEOs and chief information officers. But in the last 35 years of my businesses, where I work as a fiduciary in helping small businesses and family-owned businesses excel, I do a lot of work with individual families, helping them really wrap their arms around their finances so that they can lower debt and basically do nothing more than have an active, healthy, and abundant lifestyle and lead the life that they want to lead. And most importantly, at some particular point, should they decide to leave a legacy, we could do that as well. I have done a number of keynote presentations over the years now, webinars, written several books to help business owners and individuals, really from a perspective of personal empowerment, if you want to think of it that way. And so what I'm here to do is help each of you, whether it's professionally or personally, so that you can feel more empowered and running your particular lifestyle. So what I want to do today, and I've broken this, if I may, into a little bit of an agenda so that you have an understanding of what I'm going to present, and then stop me at any point for questions. But what I want to talk to you is a little bit about the myths of retirement. I think you have a need to understand what some of those myths are and how they affect annuities. I also want to define what an annuity is, as well as give you the understanding of the differences. I think there's a lot of folks that don't understand the difference between a life insurance plan and an annuity plan. And what are the myths of annuities? Because there's a lot out there. There are a lot of financial advisors. There are a lot of financial firms that put the nay on annuities. So I want to be able to help you with that. I also want to help you understand what that income gap is and how to get over it, and the types of annuities that are available, and eventually what works best for you. So what I want to do is I'm going to step away for a quick sec. I'm going to take some water, and then I'm going to bring my friend Kate back, who's going to help me facilitate a polling question. But before I show you that polling question, I have a question for you. If you could use the chat window, I would like to know just one thing. What is the goal that you have for today's webinar? What is the one thing from a selfish perspective you would like to learn today that I can help you out? So I'll step away, give you a second to type that into the chat window. I'll look at the chat window, and then what I will do is have Kate help me fire off this polling question if there's no questions in the chat. Okay, I'm not seeing anything come up. So my friend Kate is going to help me facilitate our first polling question of the afternoon. And here's the polling question. When it comes to retirement, what really scares the most out of you? Is it your mortality? Is it having enough money? Having enough time to enjoy life? Health and wellness? Or is there something else that perhaps you're not telling us? So take a moment, fill in the results, and I'll share some of the information on those results in a second here.
All right, folks, please make sure to choose the response and hit the submit button to register your responses here. Okay, last 5 seconds and we'll end the poll. All right, thank you so much everyone for submitting your responses. And Joe, it's back to you now. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kate. And what it appears is that when it comes to retirement, many of you have completed having enough money and having enough time to enjoy life. And that's what I hear a lot from individuals as I help them with their retirement planning. They are deeply concerned about having enough money and just having enough time to be able to enjoy their life. I spoke to a gentleman the other day that he would like to retire. He's 55, 56 years of age. When possible, he would love to be able to retire quite soon, but he's not sure yet because he had another job and he was terminated from that job. He's had to start again. So he wants to know how and when he was able to do so. So those are some of the things that we're able to, overcome with utilizing annuities as an example. I hope I am pronouncing this right. I hope is it Dina Robles or Digna Robles? Couldn't submit the response. I will have Kate reach out to you on the side as I present this information. But Dina, I will make sure that we take that into account, that your fear is health. And I agree with you 100%, health and wellness. So I will have Kate work with you offline as I continue to monitor the chat. And if you are having some technical difficulties, please do utilize that chat window, and that's how we're able to service you a lot better. So here's some of the things that I know that true when it comes to retirement as I work with different individuals. What I know to be true is simply this, and that is when I talk to individuals, what I say to them, especially when I'm helping them out with retirement planning, what I say to them is simply this. Look, when we retire, we know a couple of different things. We know that you're going to have some guaranteed income. That income is going to come from your salary. It's probably going to come from Social Security, the fact that there is some guarantee to that. Medicare and Medicaid, if you qualify for that, would be another source of income, or the capability of getting some income from Medicare and Medicaid to pay your medical expenses. And you might have some type of investment. Maybe you have an IRA, a 401k, and I'll show you that momentarily here. We also know that there's non-guaranteed income. And non-guaranteed income is income that you're going to receive some gifts. It could be income where maybe you put some money away and that money is just sitting in an account and perhaps you totally forgot about it. It happens a lot to families, and suddenly that becomes some income that you did not know about before. We also know, unfortunately, that as we live, we're going to come in contact with individuals that from our family, from our friends, and so on, that unfortunately pass away. And every now and again, there's income that comes from probate. It might be immediate family, it might be secondary family, but that could be another source of income. But that's not really where I want to focus, at least for right this second. We also know that you're going to have guaranteed expenses. And prior to joining this webinar and hosting it this afternoon, one of my clients called me, and we're literally going down her expense sheet. I have a spreadsheet that I use just to monitor expenses, and they're roughly at around $4,500 a month. And she is 53 years of age. She would like to retire, and she would like to retire in the next 2 to 5 years. And so the first thing that I'm zeroing in is that guaranteed $4,500. Naturally, if one of you is listening is a CPA or heavy into taxes, one of the things that you often look at, I know from working with my CPA, how do we lower expenses? What are the things that we need to do? What can we do to lower expenses? Now, last year, 2 years ago, with COVID, with things that are going on, we could refinance an auto loan. We could refinance a mortgage because the mortgage and the auto loan rates were very, very reasonable. Now we got a 0.5 point pop from the Federal Reserve just prior to taking this conversation on with the webinar. Interest rates for mortgages were roughly, best rate out there that I had seen, 4.4%. The average, 5.47% on a conventional 30-year loan. Trust me, it's not going to be 5% anymore, not with a 0.5 basis point move. You know as well as I do, the banks, the mortgage companies are going to do whatever they can to raise that rate as high as they can to make the most on it. I'm bringing this up because we know we're going to have mortgage, we're going to have cell phone, we're going to have internet needs, our food bills are anywhere between $300 and $500 a month. And I'm just giving a swing here, but those are guaranteed expenses. We then know at some particular point in time, as we age, as issues come up, heaven forbid, a chronic or a critical illness, those two are going to impact our expenses. And that's what we call non-guaranteed expenses. What we need to do, and the reason for carrying this conversation forward, is to create a CYA plan, a cover your, and I'll just use a different phraseology because you know where I'm going, but cover your assets. You want to make sure that you are protected at all times. And so the notion is, how do we do that? In addition to that, we know when you're retiring, there's something known as a retirement circle. It could be your pension and retirement plan, and that's going to be your Social Security. Bring this back to home plate and talking a little bit about the income side. We know that many of you have not worked just one job. You've worked probably 5 to 7 jobs in your lifetime. And so you'll probably have a 403B or an IRA or a 401k from another particular employer at some point in time. Or if you're doing part-time work, you may be able to qualify under their plan. We also know, and I do get a lot of questions from people, can I buy municipal bonds? I was on the phone earlier today for a conversation. Somebody was asking me about inflation bonds. Those are all things that are tax-free. And just like an IRA, Roth IRA or a 401k, excuse me, you're able to get you will be able to use that income tax-free, but it is still an income source. However, what you got to ensure is what might happen if you have a critical or chronic illness. What would happen if a genetic disorder that you didn't know you had pops up unexpectedly? Where is the money going to come from? And that's where life insurance with living benefits, life insurance and annuities really comes from. And that's why we developed this conversation for you. So given the fact that I just talked about life insurance, let's talk about what it is, both what this is and what an annuity is. First of all, life insurance is nothing more than the contract between you and an insurance company, or the insured at an insurance company, probably better said, because when I say you can literally take insurance out on your child. The child is the one that's going to be insured, not necessarily yourself. So there is a contract between the insured individual and the life insurance company. And essentially, in exchange, what you're going to do for you're going to pay a premium. And then should something occur, such as death, the insurance company is going to pay a lump sum known as a death benefit to your beneficiaries upon your death. Your beneficiaries then can use that money for whatever on earth they want to use it for. This money could be used to pay your death expenses, such as the funeral cost. There might be medical care. There might be hospice care. The list goes on. Many of you are very knowledgeable, or at least somewhat knowledgeable in this area, that you'll understand where those expenses are go to. But at the end of the day, and as I got heavily involved in this business years ago, what I've come to find out is life insurance is used to help to create an estate. It becomes an asset. And on another topic, and I think I've done a topic like this at some point, but on another topic, just think that life insurance could be used as an investment vehicle, especially when we're talking about permanent, or what's typically known as a whole life insurance. And the reason being is because it builds a cash value, and that cash value could potentially equate to the death benefit. The difference, however, between life insurance and then an annuity is that an annuity is garnered from an insurance company, and it refers to a contract that whereby you are actually funding this with invested funds, such as a benchmark like the S&P 500 as an example. It doesn't always work that way, because there's variable annuities, there's fixed annuities. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. But the notion is that it's an investment vehicle. An annuity is basically you placing what are called accumulations. And think of it, and people ask me, what is the best way to describe an annuity? And what I say to them is, as I got licensed in this area, and the first time I heard an annuity, I was younger, really didn't understand what it was all about. I was in my 20s, and now in my 60s, I'm now understanding more of what an annuity is. And it reminds me, I caught myself as I was with a client, reminds me when my grandmother used to go to the bank. We used to go live in Brooklyn, New York, and Nanny used to go to Greenpoint Savings Bank, and every month or every week, depending upon when Grandpa got paid, she would take money out of her wallet, she'd hand it to the teller, and it went into a quote unquote Christmas Club account. And she would not touch that money until Christmas. And then she would take it out, whatever money she saved. I have no idea. I was a young kid back then, but she would use then that income to pay for holiday gifts. Well, it's the same thing here. The cool thing is that you take money, you accumulate it into an account, and what'll happen is it will pay dividends based upon what investment vehicle you're using. And then based upon who's holding the annuity, the holding institution is then going to provide a stream of payments in the future for a specific amount of time or for the remainder of your life. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But if you think about it this way, where life insurance is building an estate, an annuity is liquidating an estate. Because if you're taking money and that money is to be used for your legacy, well, realistically, if you're going to draw down on that money, there's not going to be any money left for a beneficiary. Now, could you have a beneficiary to an annuity? The answer is absolutely yes, and I'll describe that in a little bit, but I want to address the question now. So where life insurance is building, an annuity is taking away, and it provides you, like I said, that income stream. So with that in mind, with that in mind, what I want you to think about then is what is the difference between life insurance and then the annuity itself? And so from that particular perspective, the bottom line is that life insurance is going to provide your loved ones with a financial peace of mind when you pass away. They'll be able to pay, hopefully, some probate taxes. They'll hopefully be able to pay all of your expenses, where annuities provide a tax-deferred way to grow money and provide an income stream. So for life insurance, it's going to help pay funeral costs. It'll pay daily living expenses. It may pay the mortgage of the house off if there is an existing mortgage, or maybe you wanted to leave some money for your grandchild, and the money that was placed into the death benefit would be able to do that. Now, on the flip side of it, how could an annuity help? Well, think of that notion of you now retire, and let's just say you put enough money away. Your bills are $3,500 a month, and sitting in an account is 55. The equation of approximately $5,500 or $6,000 a month sitting in an account. And so you will be able to, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, for either a period of time or the remainder of your living life, you'll be able to take out a distribution of $5,500 or $6,000 to pay off that $4,500 expense. Okay. I see that there's something in the chat window. I just want to take a look at that momentarily here. And Kenneth has a question. Is there a link to the materials? Ken, there is. I believe that prior to Kate went ahead and sent a link to the materials, this PowerPoint presentation. I know she's here, she's listening. And so what I'm going to do is I will go ahead and make sure that Kate knows to send that to you. And so Kate, Ken is looking for some of the materials related to the PowerPoint. And then I've got some additional things that I believe she's got some Social Security and some other things she'll be able to send you as well. And while she's doing that, folks, I'm going to keep Kate really busy here for a second. At this particular point in time, I have my second polling question that I want to ask of you today. And while I know that Kate's busy answering Ken's question, let me read this for you as she cues this up. And that is, when you fund an annuity, do you place money up front or can you pay in installments? Again, when you fund an annuity, can you place the money up front or can you pay in installments? And if you could take a second to answer that, that'll be great. Okay. It's actually a split decision amongst all three, quite honestly. Some have said lump sum, some have said installments, and some have said combination. And actually, it is a combination. You're all right. So give yourselves a good round of applause on that. That's where I think many people's to a certain extent, I think that's where many people start to have some issues when it concerns annuities because they're not sure how it's funded. What do I see more of versus anything else? Here's the deal. Lump sum could be used when individuals say they have an IRA or a 401k. It's been sitting into an account for a number of years. They've not really done anything with it, and they need a source of income. So is there a way to take a 401k or an IRA? You would not want to do this before 59 and a half, because remember, with IRA contributions as well as 401ks, especially in qualified plans, you're going to not only take a tax hit because these are tax deferred, but you're also going to wind up taking an early distribution penalty. So if you're going to convert this to, say, an annuity, what you want to be able to do is make sure and check with your CPAs and all your financial advisors, because every outside of federal, states are different too. So what you want to make sure of is if you're going to pull out of retirement accounts, especially qualified retirement accounts, could you put that into the annuity? Will you take some sort of a hit? The other way to do this is to take large life insurance policies, or if somebody gifts you money, say 30, 40, 50, X number of dollars, could you take that in and convert it and bring it into an annuity? The answer is absolutely. However, for the most part, and everybody's a little different. Every person in this business has seen different things. So is it possible then to do an annuity with a installment plan? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. And that's typically what I find. If I utilize the Pareto principle of 80-20, I would say most people that I know of are doing it in installments. Now, there are minimums, and it does depend upon the life insurance company that you're dealing with. Some organizations start with as little as $2,000. Some start as much as $5,000. There's a minimum on there, and then there's a maximum as far as how much you're going to put into the annuity. There are lengths of the annuity. There's a 10, 15, and 20-year annuity. So you want to understand what the payouts are going to be for that. And then the other thing that you want to be very cautious of is if you're working with somebody with, say, a limited budget, as I was the other day. I had somebody that came to me and said, I only have, Drew, anywhere between $150 to $200 a month. There are some annuities that will allow you to start as little as $100 a month or $150 a month, and then you can always build into that. As I'm getting ready to just change my slide, Kate, if you could help Ken, it looks like he lost his sound and wants to know if there's a phone number available for him. So Ken's having some trouble getting in with the webinar today. Ken, we'll make sure we get you settled. No problem. Don't worry about it. Keep those comments coming, please. So what are the types of annuities then, and how can we help you with some of those annuities? Number one, there's what's called an immediate annuity. And an immediate annuity is an annuity, once it's annuitized, it converts into an income stream for the buyer almost immediately. So the $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year that I talked about, what I said to you is you put that in, it's automatically funded from what's called that accumulation period, and then it'll start to pay out as soon as you put the money in. There's then something known as a deferred annuity, and that's an annuity that begins paying at a future date, and that's determined by the owner of the annuity. Whoever the annuitant is will then basically receive that fee structure depending upon what the time frame is to do that. There is something called a fixed annuity, which is where I typically spend a lot of my time, and that's an annuity that pays a guaranteed minimum rate of return and provides a fixed series of payments under the conditions determined when you buy the annuity. So when you start to accumulate into the annuity, you say to your representative how much you want to be paid out on a month-by-month basis. You actually set that up. Could it change? Could you make different distributions? Yes, but you kind of have to do some pre-planning at the very beginning. There's also then something known as a variable annuity. And a variable annuity, think of this as taking money and placing this into the stock market, because that is exactly how this annuity works. With a variable annuity, it's actually utilizing investments to create a rate of return for you. And so that rate of return is going to be based upon stocks and bonds. It's going to be placed on ESG, which is this new sustainable energy index that they're having right now. You also should know that in addition to being able to play in the stock market, there is the flip side of that. And the flip side of that is what's called a fixed index annuity, where the annuity itself has a minimum guaranteed rate of return. And sometimes there's a cap on that. But while there's a cap on the distribution, here's the cool thing about it. The cap on the distribution, there is a floor, and what you'll have is exposure on the top on how much you could make, but there's no loss on the bottom side. You just need to understand from your financial professional what you're getting and what you're getting yourself into. Not many people understand the financial markets, and I get that. So you do want somebody that can give you a little bit of education on that to help you out. And then with annuities, remember, you have qualified, non-qualified, and Roths that you're able to submit to. And again, that's up to your state. That's up to where you're, not only where you're living, but what the suitability is depending upon the risk tolerance, as it's called. So just a couple of things you want to think about. As I mentioned before, and your recent polling question, excuse me, how do you fund it? Well, for an annuity, there's what's called an accumulation period, and that's the period of time where your contributions to the investment are just made on a regular basis. Typically, that's going to be monthly. If you want to pay it twice a month in accordance to your paycheck, you could do that as well. However, the length of the accumulation period is going to be specified when the account is created. So once, as the financial professional is taking the application, they're going to ask you at that particular point in time, what is the length of the accumulation period? Is it going to be a 10, 15, or 20-year accumulation period? You can start an annuity in your 20s. You can start it in your 30s. It's really just up to when you want to start, when you would like to start. And then it depends on when you want to elect to withdraw those funds, because what you're going to need to do is put enough in there so that you can get enough to draw out. And once again, those lump sum or partial payments are really dependent upon you. Could you do partial and then eventually towards the very end make a lump sum payment? I mean, there's some flexibility here. You just want to set that up with your financial professional at the very beginning. It's going to be a thoughtful process. And what I typically do when I'm sitting down with individuals, we'll run through a couple of illustrations to let them know, number one, what the potential full growth would look like in 10, 15, 20 years. And we do that on a couple of different ways. We do that, let's say, on a lump sum. We do that based upon a fixed indexed annuity, depending upon the age of the individual. I am certainly not going to put somebody into a variable annuity, number one, if they're over the age of 45 or 50, only because that length of time in order to not only fund it, but to get the desired income. And, it's different strokes for different folks. There's no right or wrong to this, but I play a very conservative approach. So when I look at age and I know somebody's getting into those later years, there's going to be a more difficult time, not only to fund it, but actually to then use it. Whereas somebody who's 20 and 30, we might put them into a variable annuity because they're all about risk. They're all about making that happen. So again, it's up to each and every individual that's a financial professional to decide what is the best route to take. So how do you get your money? What are the ways in which you're going to get access to the money that you placed in? You placed it into this savings account. How do you get out it? Well, there are roughly 6 different ways. And so what I've done here is I've broken them through broken them down for you, and I'm going to go through them so that you have a good understanding of how these work. Number one, there's a life annuitization option. What that is, it provides the highest payout and it provides an income stream for your life. And it's an effective hedge against you outliving your retirement income. Many people, that is what many people are very concerned about, is that they put money away and they say, oh my God, I'm down to my last few $1,000s, or oh my God, I'm down to my last X. What's really cool about life annuitization is that this will pay you as long as you're alive. Now, you've got to have obviously enough money in there, but the fact is based upon your accumulation and then based upon the payout, that life annuitization is then going to give you as much as you need until the day you pass away. There's also a second to that, and that is called joint life. And that's the option that allows you to pass your income on to your spouse upon your death. So where I said to you before, just like a life insurance policy, you have the beneficiary, you would do the exact same thing. You can file a joint with right of survivorship, and your spouse or significant other would then be able to get that option upon your passing away. A third way in which that you would get funding for your annuity is where you would have the value of your money is paid out then over a period of years. It could be 10, 15 to 20. You get to choose it. So if somebody is coming to me as my age, they're 60, I would have them take a 20-year option. If they're 65, maybe pushing 70, then we're looking at the 10 or 15-year payout. And the only reason why is, honestly, I'm looking at the morbidity rate. That's all I'm looking at that point. The older they are, you want them to be able to use that money, and you don't want that money just to be sitting into an account, unless, of course, they want that to go to their beneficiary. But if that's the case, then we may as well just use something like joint life. But again, we choose the option which is best for that particular person at that particular time. Everyone's going to be different. A fourth option then is life with a guaranteed term. And that is, it gives you an income stream for the life. It works like a life option to a certain extent, quite honestly, but it pays you for as long as you live. But what you're doing is you're choosing that because you say there's longevity in my family. I'm going to live. My parents were in their 90s. Like my wife's immediate family, my mother-in-law passed away at 64. My father-in-law is still alive. He's 83. But my wife's grandparents lived well into their 90s, like 94 and 95. So at that particular point, as an example, we might use life with a guaranteed term because they've lived as long as they have. Another modality then is to look at what's called systematic withdrawals. And here you select the size of the payment you wish to receive every single month and how many payments you want to receive overall. That's a little bit tougher to do. Obviously, it's easy if you say, you know what, I need $1,250 every single month. That's going to take care of everything because Social Security is paying me $2,400 a month. That's paying for all of my expenses. I'm good. But you also need to choose how many payments you want to receive overall. Again, if you don't use it, it's going to your beneficiary, but there's some thought as far as life expectancy at that point. And then last but not least is then there's a lump sum. And it takes the assets in the annuity, and in one foul swoop, it pays you in the year you're allowed to take that lump sum. Again, one of the things you want to be certain of is that ordinary taxes will be due on the entire investment portion of the annuity. So that's where you need to check with a CPA or you're a local tax person to understand what, if any, of that tax hit you're going to get. Remember I said a little bit earlier that Kate was going to be around to help me with these polling questions? Well, I've got my last one for you today. And that last one is simply this. What are some of the myths that you've heard about annuities? What are some of the myths that you have heard about annuities? Take a couple of seconds to fill that out. Kate's going to guide you through it, and I'll be back in a second here.
All right. Please make sure to hit the submit button to register your responses here. And we'll keep this open for the next 10 seconds and end the poll. All right. It's 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Thank you so much, everyone, for submitting your responses. And Drew, it's back to you now. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kate. Isn't she great, guys? I need you all to go into the chat window and give her a big round of applause. She's been wonderful. She always is. Ken, it looks like she was able to help you. So please, if you would, just give her a big thank you, because she's always terrific about coming back and being a great resource so that I could put on a great webinar here on this platform. So as we look at this question, what are some of the myths that we've heard? Some of you picked that it's too darned expensive. Others have heard that annuities are a little bit risky. And last but not least is the money's going to be lost when I die. All valid questions or statements to that question. So let's run through some of the myths, and I'll get that through for you so that you'll understand. Number one. I typically get, I don't understand annuities. It's not life insurance. It is life insurance. What is it? Look at, they're not hard to understand. It just depends on two things. Number one, what the annuity is, and number two, who's selling it. There are some individuals that just make it more complicated, or unfortunately, they're new to the business. They don't know how to position it, and maybe what they're trying to do is position it as this great investment vehicle, but it's not good for you at that particular point in time, based upon age, based upon risk tolerance, the list goes on. The fact is that they're really not that hard to understand. As I said, it's almost like the Christmas Club account when I went to the bank with my grandmother. The fact is that you have a couple of different options. You have the option on accumulation, and you have the option on payout, and you just need someone to sit with you and run through those options. But most importantly, there are then, for the most part, I would say two options on the very back end of this, and that is how you will get a return on the investment. So it's either that it's going to be fixed or variable. That's probably the easiest way to do that. With an annuity, you'll get a return on investment. Part of that's going to be fixed. Some of those rates are as little as 1.5% to 2%. On the low side, they may be as much as 6 or 7% on the very high side. If, however, you're not going to do the fixed and it's going to be variable, again, that's going to be based on the stock and the bond market. Because the markets are so volatile right now, I really can't give you a good estimate, but it's one of those things where it's really not that difficult. Just remember to ask questions. Two, I do get people are going to say fees are high, and that really depends on the annuity itself. As I said, understand, you're going to be funding the annuity. Some of those funds, just like a mutual fund, just like a stock, commissions are going to be paid. There's going to be marketing and sales costs. There's going to be administrative fees. All of that will be disclosed at some point, and that disclosure will occur because you're going to get a buyer's guide with these products. So you'll not only get a brochure, but you will be getting a buyer's guide, which will allow you to understand all of the costs that you're supposed to be paying. Third is that you'll not be able to use the annuity in retirement. That's not true at all. As you start to fund this during the accumulation period, you will know when that payout's supposed to begin, but you want to make certain that you understand how long you're going to have to put the accumulation in and when the payout's going to be. My spouse will not get survivorship. That's untrue. That is absolutely untrue. You can name a beneficiary, or as I said, you will get right of survivorship. Another one I typically hear is, if I have a 401k, I don't need an annuity. Well, you may need the annuity if, in fact, there is an income gap. With a pension plan, most specifically, because you're only getting between, say, 40 and 60% of what your full salary is. So you want to understand what that income gap will be with Social Security and go from there. Now, if you have a 401k or an IRA from an old employer and some of that money could be used for your income, then right, you will not need the annuity. It really depends on what your particular income is at that particular point in time. Another thing that I hear, and I just had this conversation, I will not name the sources here, but annuities are very unpopular and many advisors don't recommend them. Look, all I say is I'm not here to talk about individuals selling insurance or annuities, nor do I not want to name plans. Everyone has an opinion. It really just depends on whose opinion you're going to like the best. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's about a trust and respectful relationship. If you trust the person, you think you're getting good advice, listen to what they have to say. Now, last but not least is the yield. And again, that depends on whether it's a fixed or variable annuity. That really is what it is. So how do you fund it? Do you want to get started today? Look, I'm sounding like the salesperson and I'm not here, but it really is one of three things. Number one, you just write a check. Here's my $100. Here's my $2,000. Let's fund the annuity right now. The second is where you could do an account transfer, where you take it from an existing IRA or 401k. You take an immediate EFT from your paycheck. You could do it that way, or you're just transferring if you happen to have an old annuity and you put that annuity into a new one. You certainly can do it that way. So what are you going to look for, and what are some of the ways to get started? Couple of different things that I recommend before finishing up here. Number one, I always ask, what are your financial goals? What are you trying to do? I also want to know what your age is, because as you age, it may be too difficult to fund the annuity. So we may have to look at different investment vehicles to get that income that you're looking for. Again, we have to look at this in two ways. Number one, is there an income gap? If there's not an income gap, could we then just simply use this as an investment vehicle and draw down off of the dividends and interest we're going to earn? Absolutely. It just is really dependent upon every individual. Last but not least is I always look at what the risk tolerance is. That will help based upon if the person is going to be qualified for an annuity, are they up for, based upon their age and based upon their risk tolerance, variable versus fixed. If I use, as a term I used earlier, the Pareto principle, I go with 80-20, and I tend to take a more conservative approach. Even with somebody that's 20, I much rather put them into a benchmark-based fixed indexed security in an annuity versus variable, only because of the market volatility, and really not, you don't get to control the market, and it's all about long-term, not short-term. And too many people really get troubled on that short-term notion. So what are the ways that you can really prepare and help yourself in retirement? Number one, understand your future needs. You want to understand that by saving for liquidity and the lifestyle that you want. So if you're accustomed to a $4,000 a month or a $5,000 a month income or an $8,000 a month income, then you have to plan to start saving for that $8,000 a month income. And if you're young and listening to this now, then start now. Don't wait until you're 40, 50. It's too late. You need to start making contributions now. If you're a university professor, if you're a K through 12 person, teacher, if you're an administrator, if you're a first responder, if you're in the military, I always suggest that everybody learns about their pension plan, learn when you're fully vested, and what early retirement would look like versus full retirement, and then what it would be for single survivorship or joint survivorship and a beneficiary getting access to your pension. You should also know what Social Security is at ages 62 for early retirement, 65, and ultimately 67, and ultimately understand investment and what risk is all about. As I complete here, one of the other things that I always mention to everybody, because an annuity is more on that retirement side, is you need to sit with a CPA or an attorney that is very helpful with estate planning. From that perspective, you need to think about wills, you need to think about trusts, you need to sit with somebody and understand where all of your accounts are. getting things like a durable power of attorney, a healthcare power of attorney, should you become ill in some particular way, shape, or form. And last but not least, understand the tax laws and what the predicaments you might be in with any of your investment vehicles, which include life insurance as well as annuities. The best way to go to retirement is being as educated and prepared as possible so that you can live your golden years just that, golden and not in bronze. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure to be with you today. Ken, I'm sorry that you had some issues with the downloadable link and the recording, but I know Kate was able to fix you. I didn't see anything come up, so appreciative of that. Folks, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your passion. I thank you for your conviction in education and wanting to become more empowered with products and services that we have available. It was my pleasure to be here today, and I wish you a blessed remainder of the day.
Thank you so much, Drew, for giving this amazing and informative session. And we are glad to have you on our platform. And lastly, for all the users, an evaluation form shall be sent within 24 hours to only those attendees who have answered all the polling questions. And it is required for you to complete the evaluation form in order to receive the credit certificate. We would request you to rate the webinar and provide us the feedback about the platform, speaker, content, and the webinar in the evaluation form as well as in the chat panel. Also, you can follow us on social media so you can stay updated about the latest webinars and industry information. And lastly, if you need to view the recording of the webinar or if you have any further questions, please reach out to us at support@my-cp.com and we would provide you the link to view the recording and will assist you further. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience. Keep coming back. Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you so much, Drew. Take care.